This video is brought to you by Squarespace. I wish to do something today that Formula 1 itself has not done for a very long time. Well, I mean, not for the last 6 years or something. And that is discussing 10 records that will probably never be broken. I was going to include Schumacher's 5 titles in a row record that may never be broken, but considering the determination of Max Verstappen and not really sure what he could do, not discounting him, I'm not going to include it today. So let's start off with number 10, and 10 being the most recent record that was broken that may never be broken again. And number 1, oh well, that's positively ancient. Number 10 being the most championship points in a single season, that being 575, held by Max Verstappen in 2023. Yeah, that was a busy year, as we will be lingering in this patch for a good long while. And this points tally benefited immensely for the fact that in 2010, we got these point structure that we know today. 25 points goes to the winner and 1 for 10th place, with that little fastest lap interlude between 2019 and last year. And considering we are in a period of convergence and new regulations may make runs of reliable domination less likely for a little bit, replicating such a haul of points is becoming increasingly implausible for one driver. Teams are also now prioritising reliability and tyre conservation over relentless pace, and any future point system revisions may also flatten distributions in reaction to such runs. Essentially, Verstappen's perfect storm of reliability, driver skill, and maybe now a disinclination for absolute raw pace for the sake of just, keeping things level and reliable and constant, may mean that this points tally of nearly 600 points may be unlikely to be matched in the next few years, or maybe ever. But yeah, that whole constructors by himself thing, well, Schumacher did that twice. Number 9 being the most wins in a single season. That being, of course, 19 and Max Verstappen 2023. Yeah, here we are again. Verstappen's 19 wins that year shattered the previous single season win record, overtaking the 15 win tally set by, himself the previous year. 19 wins in 1 year is far more than a person could even expect to win in a total career spanning maybe 10 plus years. And when looking back with what we know now, that the RB19 wasn't as bulletproof as people thought at the time, it makes Max's domination and performance all the more impressive that the rumblings were slightly coming out of the woodwork thanks to Checo's warning in Spain, but because Max was so good, it didn't matter. Because Max was able to ride it out superbly, except for a little blip around the Singaporean Grand Prix. But even then, I remember all of the interviews that Red Bull were giving out that they were thinking, oh, it's only one race, it's not going to matter so much if we don't win it, oh well, we'll take the rough with the smooth. Everywhere else, we're pretty good. And what makes this record really unlikely to be broken is that, supposing, for example, we get a situation where race tallies are then brought down under 24 races for the sake of making sure, the people, the crew and whatnot don't die of a heart attack or something like that, or be able to spend time with their family. We might see a consolidation of Grand Prix weekends down to 22, back where it was in 2023. And also, it's going to take a lot of reliability, relentless consistency to be able to get that level of wins ever again. Sure, seasons may expand beyond 24 races, maintaining such a high win ratio though, does become increasingly difficult in a field where a tenth of a second can decide grid position. Oh, real quick, I've got to give a shout out to Squarespace, who are sponsoring today's video. They're the wizards behind the curtain, helping people like me, who mostly climb ladders and yap about Formula 1. They can help me build websites while I'm doing all of this. Squarespace makes the whole process ridiculously easy. You can build a gorgeous website, talk to your audience, even sell your weird little niche products. Ladder merch, anyone? And do it all on one slick platform. And one feature that makes this happen fast is Blueprint AI. It helps you generate a custom site in minutes, with design ideas that match your brand's personality. I guess you could call mine industrial meets unhinged. So if you've been flirting with the idea of launching a site, go to squarespace.com/LawVS to save 10% on your first domain or website. Thanks again to Squarespace, and now let's get back to me yelling from a ladder. Number 8 is the most consecutive Grand Prix victories, that being 10, and yet again Max Verstappen 2023. And don't worry, this is the last 2023 entry, I promise. In response to Checo mounting a title bid of his own that year, between Miami and Monza, Verstappen achieved an unbroken string of 10 consecutive wins, breaking Sebastian Vettel's long-standing record of 9 a decade previously. Say what you will regarding the internal rumblings regarding the little issues that were bothering the RB19 and especially the RB20, The fact is, though, is that we managed to see from Red Bull an absolutely Herculean effort, and you've got to give credit to them for that. That year was excellent. And considering it took a decade for the German's record to be beaten, albeit by just one win, it might stand to reason that we might have to wait another decade for it to be challenged again, the Dutchman's one. The only way we can see this happening again is if we get another Titanic rule change, which means that one team outshines everybody else, like with Mercedes in 2014, albeit you had two big-name drivers who were sharing the spoils. But if you had a case where that happened with one driver reigning supreme, that's the only time you can think of maybe they could get 11 victories in a row. And that car would have to be bulletproof, whilst the other car is less lucky, or their competitors are completely crash-prone, or both. And besides, the constant game of cat and mouse between the engineers and regulators means that these kinds of winning streaks are very unlikely to happen, because if we did get that happening, the rules would be changed, and then we'd be back to square one. That's what happened with Schumacher in 2004. Ferrari's drop off the following year, very evident. And now we move to number 7, and hey, we're not in 2023 anymore. We are moving back 3 years to 2020, and the most career wins, that being, of course, Lewis Hamilton. He eclipsed Schumacher's legendary 91 wins at the 2020 Portuguese Grand Prix when he got 92. And as of this recording, Hamilton has exceeded that 92 to become 105. Him last adding to it at the Belgian Grand Prix last year. Wait, hang on a minute, 92, 105, surely that would mean that after Spa, that's when the record was set, so therefore it should be the most recent record on this list. Well, no, for the sake of this one, I'm counting when that record was originally broken, so that would be 92. That is what Hamilton got, and therefore it's my list, and therefore that's what counts. It just means that Lewis has simply been adding to that record from there. This accumulation was built over an extraordinary era of hybrid dominance from Mercedes and a career marked by consistent fitness, precision, and adaptability. And whilst Verstappen is the only active driver who may come close to this number, the odds are still pretty steep, considering also the enthusiasm of the Dutchman and whether or not he can find good fortune at Red Bull or elsewhere, because Verstappen's made it clear that he is not going to be chasing that record of Lewis Hamilton. He doesn't want to be around the sport by the time he's 40 or something like that, which Lewis Hamilton now is. Now I think Lewis's record of 105 victories, or 92 when he actually broke that record of Schumacher's, is probably going to be sticking around maybe forever. It depends whether or not you can actually get that long-term prosperity for one driver alone. Modern F1 careers, they're also now carefully managed due to driver fatigue, fitness longevity, and the ever-growing race calendar. Add to that budget caps and technical regulations promoting parity, and the window for any one driver to accumulate more than 100 wins now is pretty slim. Hamilton's run, therefore, is probably going to be going down into the status of legendary, in that you had that driver who was on the form of his life, the team that was on the form of its life, they came together and they made excellent victory babies. You might get 1 or 2 seasons of good fortune, but to have 8 constructors' titles in a row, that's nuts. We're back again with Lewis Hamilton for number 6, when he broke the record of the most career pole positions in 2017 with 69. Nice. Surpassing Michael Schumacher's prior record of, well, 68. And again, according to the rules of my list, he has extended Lewis that record of pole positions to now 104. But I do count it from 2017. Which just makes it really, really wild. He's had that many poles since then. It practically matches his win tally. That's crazy. But also a reflection of Hamilton at his peak of his powers was mighty. It's a figure that dwarves anybody else's. And it just shows that his one-lap mastery, it couldn't be beat for the longest time. And that makes the current situation where in the ground effect era, he reportedly sucks at qualifying. And it's a complete departure of what he was able to do at the beginning of the turbo hybrid era before the flaw became such a big deal. And honestly, I think all the drivers out there will never even get close to half of that figure of Hamilton's, because Max Verstappen, he's not even at 50 yet. And next up is number 5 from 2010, the youngest world champion. 23 years and 134 days for one Sebastian Vettel. Now, okay, you might be thinking that maybe, just maybe, in the next couple of years, Kimi Antonelli, the young person from Mercedes who's not even 20 yet, might start to poke the bear of that particular record, which looked unlikely to be broken. But then we saw in Miami, he broke the record of the youngest ever pole sitter, albeit for a sprint, which in some statistician circles, they don't count, but in many circles, they do. Take your pick. But as of now, until we can see the W17 of next year on track and to see whether or not it can emulate the absolute domination of 2014 and the W05, then this record is going to remain on this list because, put simply, it is too young to say that Kimi can go for a title run. Can he maybe win a victory this season? Maybe. It's possible, especially if the Mercedes upgrades turn out to be amazing. But Sebastian Vettel captured his maiden F1 title at the 2010 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix at just that young age. His youth, combined with Red Bull's technical supremacy and relentless pace, it made him the youngest champion ever, younger than Alonso at Renault. And what helped this record endure is that until recently, drivers were arriving within F1 either in their early 20s already as rookies, or they would enter younger, but for teams that weren't going to challenge for titles during the Mercedes domination era. The new records of 2025, considering they've got a couple of years to try and get to that particular feat at the top team, there is a good chance it could easily be broken, but until then, it's very unlikely, because we've still got Max Verstappen knocking around, we've got Oscar Piastri now coming online, Lando Norris is there, George Russell is there, Charles Leclerc may get a look in. There are some big names who are in their mid to late 20s, but yet crucially are above the age record. The only person right now I think could come close is Kimi Antonelli, since that Mercedes is pretty good already, and who knows what it might be like next year. And besides, climbing the steep learning curve of modern F1, it requires more experience, and also sometimes tolerances for rookies to be on it immediately reduces patience for some and sees their careers coming to a screeching halt very early on. Jack Doohan. But it's going to be a very hard task for anyone under the age of 23 to mount some kind of campaign, considering you've got so many good people out there right now. You know, the rookies, they might give it a try. And then number 4, which I definitely think won't be broken, is Brawn GP's unrivaled 1-for-1 championship record from 2009. Yeah, you might be thinking this is a cop-out since that was the only season they partook in before they then became Mercedes, and they used to be Honda, and technically Honda spent most of that money in development, but as far as I'm concerned, it counts. It, I don't think, will ever be broken again, especially considering how many big name manufacturers are coming in, and yeah, I just don't see it happening. I don't see Cadillac being able to do it on the first bounce, and then they won't be able to match it again, and then again, and then again, and then again forever, or until they bow out. Same goes for Audi. And this is counting for the constructors too, because you got Jensen winning the driver's title, the team got the constructors as well, they had a 100% success rate. And the team capitalizing on that radical route change for 2009, and then of course the double diffuser, it gave them that decisive aerodynamic advantage during the first half of the year. No other F1 team had ever gone unbeaten in terms of championship efficiency. And given the amount of cost, resources, and time that any team would need to take in trying to mount anything close to that, driver constructors in one go, this just makes this being able to be matched or bettered in 2 for 2 utterly impossible. Their fairy tale season remains, and I think forever will be, an anomaly in the sport, but a very nice and hopeful one. It was a very good feel-good story in my imagination. What does it say on the trophy? Brawn. Boom. Number 3, the smallest margin of victory. That being 0.011 seconds between Rubens Barrichello and Michael Schumacher at the United States Grand Prix of 2002. That shot where Michael slowed down on the straight to try and orchestrate a photo finish, with Rubens Barrichello ultimately picking up the win, Schumacher then admitting in the press conference afterwards that he was trying to make a pose for the photographers, but then, with a wry smile, failed a little bit. Of course, this could easily be seen as an act of goodwill to make up for the disastrous Austrian Grand Prix, where Michael was told to take the win yet again from Rubens 2 years in a row, but then of course the Brazilian took it with good grace, and then everyone booed. Michael tried to be a good sport and give Rubens the top spot. He got penalised by the FAA for not doing the proper procedure. It was an absolute mess. 2001, fine. David Coulthard was looking fairly decent, but in 2002, there was no need to make that move, Jean. Come on! Let Rubens have that win! Regardless of intent, the visual drama and razor-thin timing remain unmatched. And drivers often conserving tyres or fuel at the finish, orchestrating such a precise margin is extremely rare and dangerous. For Ferrari, it didn't really matter. They'd already won both titles anyway, so it was just purely for sport. But quite frankly, the optics right now when social media is rife, this would go on for days and days and days. They'd be thinking, did Michael Schumacher give Rubens Barrichello a pity win? Or, Michael Schumacher, he's just so pompous, thinking he could change and be F1 God or something like that. No, it was just Michael having a little bit of fun. But even then, it would be so difficult to try and make it just so. And yeah, that time I don't think it will be beaten. Number 2 is the most consecutive retirements, something that the Formula 1 video of old did not pick up on. From Andrea de Cesaris between 1987 and 88, 18 consecutive DNF. And quite frankly, I doubt that anyone would want this record, and I don't think it could be beaten again because even with next year and reliability going down a bit from this year, I don't think you're going to get 18 DNFs in a row. But yes, Andrea de Cesaris failed to finish a total of 18 races, setting a record for the most consecutive retirements, one of which he achieved earlier in the decade with a relatively paltry total of 12, driving first for Brabham before BMW abandoned them. Not all of his DNFs were down to him crashing and stuff. There was a little bit of unfortunate circumstances and unreliability, but yeah, there is a reason why he is sometimes known as Andrea de Cesaris. But I am also going to throw Andrea a bone here because up until very recently, Formula 1 was really bad when it came to reliabilities, the 80s especially, with all of them turbos going over 1,000 horsepower. And while de Cesaris showed flashes of speed and earned respect later in his career, regularly stepping in for various teams all the way through the mid-90s, this streak became emblematic of both his reputation and the mechanical volatility of the time. In today's F1, you wouldn't get that sort of record because that team would become heavily and thoroughly uninvestable, and people's eyebrows start to raise when a driver has 3 DNFs in a row. Can you imagine a driver surviving 18 of them? No, it would never happen. They would be gone, quite frankly, within 5. So yeah, 18, nah, never happening, never changing. And then for number 1, it's the complete opposite of what we saw in number 3. Number 1 is the largest margin of victory. And we're not talking, 50 seconds. We're not talking even a minute. We're talking, over 5 minutes. Stirling Moss over Mike Hawthorne in 58. There is no way this is going to be tested. For starters, laps don't even come close to 2 minutes, so you wouldn't be counted after being lapped. Moss, driving that car, especially when it was incredibly hot that time, just managed to show clinical brilliance amongst everyone else. Mike Hawthorne, I think, was the only person on the same lap, which just illustrates how long the circuits were back in the day. In contrast, modern F1 cars are designed primarily for reliability for the sake of saving costs, because, yeah, sure, you can make it absolutely super duper fast, but if it breaks all the time, then you're just going to get grid penalties. Oh, you didn't have to worry about grid penalties back in the day. You could go as fast as you wanted. Oh, if the car broke down, oh, just get Terry over there, get him there with a spanner. Oh, he can fix it, no problem. Far less complex than the machines today. Sometimes you just have to kick the tyre and you'll be back in the game. Not to mention, I think the modern case of conserving tyres and conserving resources means that any win over 30 seconds would be churlish, frivolous, unnecessary. It would be putting far too much strain on the components, so you can manage. 15 seconds, a pit stop in your pocket, as Martin Brundle says, that's enough. That's all you got to do. Yeah, that didn't used to be a thing. You could basically just wrangle that car around and then break it by the end of the weekend. You'd never have to see it again. Because remember back in the days of qualifying engines? That was back in the 2000s, people. So yeah, that record of Moss's of 5 minutes, 12.75 seconds, not only is it never going to be broken, it's quite frankly become sacred. And what's also sacred is your time, and I thank you for sharing it with me. If you would like to watch one of my other videos on a subject that you might find interesting, perhaps, this one might be taking your interest, and I'll see you over there straight after this one.